It is.
Okay, so we're going to record. I know, like I said, Punta Cana is going on right now, so I'm sure a lot of people are out having a party at the beach and all that, but we're going to do some good, important work right here. So Jessica, Christy, thanks for joining us tonight. Even though Christy looks like you're playing soccer mom right now.
She's muted. She
Okay.
can't hear you. Or you can hear her.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen here so you guys can see. I even made a awesome PowerPoint. Should I just do share screen and then?
Yeah.
Pull it up? Okay.
I'll be home in a couple minutes, so then I'll get out my piece of paper.
Yeah,
okay.
No, you're good.
You can go to, you can do it this way, or you can go to like the presentation. See that on the right hand side.
Yeah, okay, so we're going to talk about overcoming your biggest obstacle tonight. And this is a topic that I really do feel strongly about, and I feel like is probably the biggest thing that's keeping you, that's keeping me, keeping all of us from being super successful. This obstacle is something that we're going to talk about today. And like I said, when we announced the call, is it's something that I want you to really take seriously and take the time to write and participate and do as much as you can to be an active learner through this call. So we'll get started here. What this topic came about was I spent the weekend in Tampa probably about a month ago now, and it was at a men's retreat with a guy named Scott Mann. And you guys who went to Summit last year, he spoke there with Summer Tucker's group. And he has an amazing background. For those of you who don't know him, he was Green Beret. He served about 18 years, I believe, in Afghanistan, and has some amazing leadership qualities himself from what he's learned throughout his military experience, and also from his father, who was a great leader as well. And you know, he still teaches. He still is very active in that community. But he tours around with Bo Eason. So if you've heard of him, he's a big speaker that a lot of Beachbody coaches will go and see. But so we spent the weekend in Tampa, and we spent a lot of time talking about developing our story and you know, really getting in touch with your leadership abilities. But one of the things that spoke to me most was one of his guest speakers. His name is David Martin, or David Martin for us English speakers. But the thing that he talked about was this topic of overcoming ourselves, basically. So ourselves are our own worst enemies. They're our biggest obstacles is our own self. And so that's what we're going to be talking about. So in a book called Turning Pro, so it's by an author named Steven Pressfield, and he is quickly becoming my favorite author. I read another book of his called War of Art, which was amazingly good. Turning Pro is equally as good. And then I'm reading another book of his right now called Do the Work. But in Turning Pro, so he talks a lot about a thing called resistance. And if you read The War of Art, you'll understand that resistance is anything that's keeping us from our potential and keeping us from realizing our true selves. So he calls it resistance. You can give it whatever name you want to give it. But resistance is always active. It's always there. It's unrelenting. It's unbiased. It doesn't care who you are, what position you are in the company, or whatever your calling may be. Resistance is always going to be active against you. And so in the book Turning Pro, he contrasts an amateur with a professional. So an amateur is most of society as we are right now. And a professional is what we become as we overcome resistance and realize who we really are and what our calling really is in this life in our true selves. And so he says in the book, he says, the force that can save the amateur is awareness, particularly self-awareness. But the amateur understands, however dimly, that if she truly achieved this knowledge, she would be compelled to act upon it. That's pretty scary, right? If you really understand who yourself is, that means you actually have to do something about it. That's kind of scary. So to act upon this self-awareness would mean defining herself, i.e. differentiating herself from the tribe, and thus making herself vulnerable to rejection, expulsion, and all the other fears that self-definition elicits. Fear of self-definition is what keeps an amateur an amateur and what keeps an addict an addict. Okay, and this was such a huge point for me because like I talked about in the Scott Mann training that I went to, he talks a lot about tribe. And from his experience in Afghanistan, where he spent, like I said, about 18 years among these tribes, these small little tribes all throughout Afghanistan, is what he found was this type of tribal mentality is built within each of us from thousands of years of our history. That's was built into us as human beings. And so that fear of being kicked out of this tribe that we're a part of keeps us from doing a lot of things. And so here, Stephen Pressfield talks about that, where if we differentiate ourselves, we define ourselves as, this type of a human being, and we realize who we are with our vulnerabilities and our weaknesses. That brings up a fear within us. And it's a real fear, and it's legitimate that we might be kicked out of that tribe or we might be rejected by our peers. And so if we realize that our true potentials and become who we're supposed to become, we might be rejected by the people around us. And what if we lose our friends? Then what? Then we're not going to have any friends. Then we're going to be kicked out of this tribe, and we're going to be on our own. And if we're on our own, that means we're, back in tribal times, if we're kicked out of the tribe, that means that you're off on your own, and being alone means that, you're subject to all the, different lions and beasts and other things that are out there that could kill you. And so it's a legitimate fear that's built in within each of us, that we fear for our lives if we're rejected by those around us. And so that's the resistance that you'll hear inside of you. And one of the three of the biggest voices of resistance that you'll hear inside of yourself. One is that you're not great. 2 is not you. And 3 is not done. So these are some of the voices that you'll hear inside of you, which contribute to this resistance. So let's talk about the one at the top, not great. So not great, that's the voice inside of you telling you that you suck, that you don't matter, that you're not good. Okay, that's the self-talk that kind of goes through your head, the voices that you'll hear inside of yourself when you're going to try something new or try something scary. The second one is not you. And so that's the comparison voice, where you look at other coaches or you look at other families or parents, and you start comparing yourself to them, and you get that voice saying, yeah, I don't belong. He or she is so much better than I am. That's great that person can have all that success, and man, they're really talented, and man, they're beautiful and have all these skills and all of that, and that's wonderful for them, but that's not me. Okay. The third one is not done. And so that's the voice that's telling you that you're you're overwhelmed. You've got so much going on. I'll never get this done. But when I'm done doing all this research, or when I'm done planning, or when I'm done creating this new training, or when I'm done creating this challenge group, or as soon as I can, learn how to do Facebook ads, then I'll start doing it, right? So it's that voice that I've got to do all of this stuff, and then I can start to be successful. Okay, so those are our three voices that cycle around inside people's heads. And what's interesting with this one is, and Brene Brown talks about this, is you've got this say you've got this not great voice going on inside of your head. Well, that you don't matter, or you're not good enough, or anything like that. And so you start to do some personal development, you start to do different things to try to build that up. And then you start to tell yourself, you know what, I am good enough. I can do this. And you start to have that, that positive self-talk, building yourself up. And then comes this opposing voice from the other side saying, well, look at you, aren't you getting a little, too big for yourself? And so you've got these two different opposing voices, one that's trying to tear you down. And then once you start to feel good at yourself, then it's coming at you from another point, right? And so you've got all these different voices going on. And the more you can recognize these three different voices, the more you can understand that when those thoughts are coming into your head, that's all this is. It's all just resistance. And that resistance is what's keeping you from becoming what you're really supposed to be. Okay, so if any time you start hearing these voices, point that out inside of your head and say, no, that's just that voice of resistance. That's that not great voice. That's the not you voice. That's the comparison telling me that I'm not good enough, or that person's going to be successful but not me. Okay, so don't listen to it. Realize for what it is. It's resistance, and point it out. So the rest of this, what they call the home for the helpless. So that's builds the roof. The bottom is built by this pillar over right here of victim and entitlement. So victim and entitlement is that resistance, that voice inside of yourself saying, what works for everybody else, but it's not going to work for me. I'll never be like them. That victim type of mentality where, yeah, everything bad, of course it happened to me. It's going to happen to me. Anything bad is going to happen to me. Where you tell yourself that you're the victim over and over again. And so that's what you see is bad things constantly happening to you. And your worldview is jaded by this lens of, everything that could go wrong is going to go wrong. And so that's what you see in the world. When that voice is playing inside of your head, what you're doing is you're giving your power away to somebody else. And when you give your power to somebody else and you allow them to put you down, your happiness is then in that person's hands. So you no longer have control over yourself and your happiness. You've given that to somebody else. And when your victim is blaming, it's whining, it's complaining, it's waiting for somebody else to make the decision for you. So to get out of that, you've got to take that control back and say, no, I'm in charge of my happiness. I'm entitled to do as well as anybody else out there. And nobody else can make this decision for me. I'm going to make it for myself, because if I leave that choice up to somebody else, then it's never going to happen. Nobody else is going to choose you to be successful. If you don't choose it for yourself, it's not going to come about, because nobody's going to say, hey, Tricia, I want you to be super successful. So here you go. Here's all the tools and here's all the, coaches and everything, right? You've got to make that choice for yourself. And so the second part over here is distraction. And this is something that I'm really, really good at. So numbing, procrastination, avoidance, it's easier to distract yourself than to actually face the real issues. So like I said, I'm super good at this, TV watching, what do we call it before? Like chasing easy, right? Like anything that's easy, that's what I'm going after. Because it's easy to distract, it's easy to numb, it's easy to, just avoid all the hard things and live your life on what's easy. So the crazy thing here is, like I have written there on number 5, money follows attention. Okay, so whoever is keeping your attention usually ends up taking your money. And the same thing goes for you. If you can hold people's attention, then that means that the opposite's coming, right? That the money is coming towards you. So how good are you at holding people's attention? If you're distracting yourself with, Netflix or whatever, they're taking your money, right? You're watching commercials, you're watching ads for this and that, and you're, distracted by, looking at other people's blogs and different things that they're creating. Well, most of the time you're going to end up buying something from them because they're keeping your attention, and that's where the money's going. That's where your money's going if you're spending your time being distracted with that. Okay, so another quote from Turning Pro. He says, before we turn pro, our life is dominated by fear and resistance. We live in a state of denial. We're denying the voice in our heads. We're denying our calling. We're denying who we really are. We're fleeing from our fear into an addiction or shadow career. When we turn pro, we stop running from our fears. We turn around and face them. And so he talks about a shadow career. So a shadow career is, think about a shadow as it's not the real image, but it's a reflection of the real image. And so a career or something that we feel like is our true purpose deep down inside of ourselves, the thing that really drives us and the thing that we really love should be our career. But the resistance that stands in between us and our true career is what keeps us from really pursuing that thing that we love. And so instead of pursuing the thing that we really love, we create this shadow career that's easier, that allows us to still do something and almost pretend like we're following along with our life's pursuits. But we're not facing the hard things. We're not facing that resistance. And so that becomes a shadow career because it's not truly what we love. The more that we face those voices inside of our head, the more we face that resistance, those voices that we just talked about, the more that we face those and understand that that's just something standing in the way of becoming who we truly are, then that's when we turn pro and we realize who we really are. Okay, and so this is the thing that I have grown to love over the past few weeks. Something that's made a huge difference in myself, in my relationships with Tiffany. And so I made this awesome graphic and drawing here. So you're welcome for that. And so what this is it's a graph here, right? So here's, a point in time, this vertical line right here. As you go down this line right here, so this is, time as it goes along here. This up above here is your conscious thought, and below is your subconscious. So say you're going along your day, you're following along this line. You can see my cursor here, right? You're following along this line, and all of a sudden something triggers you. Okay, so you hit this trigger point right here, and what a trigger is it's thoughts. It could be words coming from somebody else. It could be an event. It could be a sound. It could be anything. But a trigger is something that causes you to go on this trip right here, which we're going to talk about next. So it brings up emotion within yourself. And so this trigger is completely yours. It's usually based on something from your past. So the example there is the military person who was blown up during a war, and so they come home, and when they hear a car backfiring, they duck for cover, right? So that backfiring sound is their trigger because it brings up the emotion within themselves of something that happened in the past. So that's kind of a big example, but triggers can be anything, and it could be something big or something small. So you hit this trigger point, and what that does is that takes you on this trip. And so this trip takes you leaving your consciousness down into your subconsciousness. And so what happens when you get into your subconscious is you fall into your it's called your amygdala, your fight, flight, or freeze. It's your non-thinking part of your brain. When you're up here in your consciousness, you're using your frontal cortex. When you fall into your subconscious, it's something that's built into us as human beings. When we're under any type of stress, then we fall into this subconscious line of thinking, and there's a whole bunch of physiology behind it. But we go on this trip, and we start having all of this chatter inside of our head. And so we go from really thinking, using our cortex, our frontal cortex, into subconscious where we're not really thinking. Okay, that's the thinking in quotes that I have on there. So we go from actually rational thought into just distraction, emotion. You've got just that cycling of thoughts going through your head. And so, like, an example of this is with Tiffany and I. So if I hear a certain words or phrases or something that she's done, and then that causes me to go on this trip, which I start cycling through my head of like,
she doesn't care about me.
She doesn't care about me. I'm not heard. I'm not seen by her. Like all this kind of stuff that's not rational. It's not true, but it's just this stream of thoughts that's taking me down, and causing me to leave rational thought and go down into my subconscious. And so what happens then is you come to this point. It's called your tell. So if you've ever played poker, you'll know that the tell is, if somebody has a really good hand, you want to keep a poker face, right? You want to keep no emotion. You want to keep, nothing happening on your face that somebody else can see that and say, oh, he just, got a smile on his face. He must have a really good hand, so I'm going to fold so he doesn't take my money. Okay, so that's the tell. Is the sign within yourself that you're on the trip. And the sign can be physical, it can be emotional, it can be the thoughts, it can be a feeling of being small, of anything. Okay, that's the tell. That's the sign that I'm on the trip. And then so here's that dotted line right there. Once you recognize your tell, you understand that you're on that trip, then you start to make the turn. Okay, the turn is that change. It's where you're coaching yourself out of the trip, back into your consciousness, allowing you to breathe, allowing you to get back into your rational thought. So this is the turn. And so the last T on here, so there's the 5 T's, right? Trigger, trip, tell, turn, and train. The train is where you practice making that turn. You practice recognizing what your tell is. You're rehearsing it. You're practicing making the turn, and you do your training when emotions are low. If you have a high emotion time, you're down in this subconscious. That's the wrong time to be training because you're not going to get anything out of it. And so this is the training right here. And so these steps right here have been awesome for me to understand, what are these triggers? What are these things that are taking me down and causing me to lose the power within myself? When you're on this trip, that's when resistance is at its highest, and that's when you're going to hear these voices inside of your head intensify. And you're going to believe them, and it's going to take you down into this subconscious. And this trip can go on for years if you don't recognize it. It can take you down, and you can keep going and going and going. And you'll see people like this that, like I talked about on the last slide or 2 slides ago, the victim type mindsets. People that live in that victim type mindset, they've been on this trip. They got triggered a long time ago, and they've been on a trip for years. And until they learn to recognize the tell and train themselves to take that turn and go back up, they're going to stay there. And the same is true for you and I. And until we can go through this process and learn what it is that's triggering us. So, we follow people on Facebook, and they have these great images that they've put out there, and they seem to be super successful. And so that triggers us. And so we start to go on this trip of, I'm not great. I'm not good at this. This other coach is so great. And they're doing all these things that I can't do. And they're so successful, and look at their life. And they have this, amazing house and gym, and I could never have that. And you
maybe
start
I shouldn't be a coach. I can't do this.
Yeah, exactly. And so all of these voices are taking you on this trip and taking you down. And it's not reality. None of that's true. I mean, that could be some joker coach who doesn't know what they're doing, and they're just putting up
front that they're successful.
Putting up this front that they do this great business, and really they don't. And yet you allowed that to trigger yourself and take you down, and cause all these thoughts to go through your head. But so the key is recognizing that if you start to see that within yourself, and I'm just using this as an example because it could be anything, but learn to recognize that within yourself that, hey, look, I'm starting to have all these negative thoughts within myself. I'm starting to think about quitting or whatever it may be. I'm having all this comparison. Whoa, I'm on a trip right now. Okay, so my tell is, that I'm having, I'm starting to feel small. I'm starting to have all this conversation within my head. I'm, having all these emotions.
Maybe your heart is racing. That's what mine does. My
Right.
heart races.
Yeah, heart races. My stomach starts to kind of churn and tie in knots. I'm really nervous. And so once you recognize that, you identify your tell, and then you start to think, oh, okay, that's just the trip that I went on. Now I'm okay. And then you make that turn and you go up, and then you can start to train like, okay, and next time I see, that type of post or, whatever it was that was your trigger, now I can start to, it still might trigger you, but that trip is going to last for, a minute or two, whereas before it lasted for a whole hour or a couple days.
I was going to say, this can happen for days and sometimes weeks. I mean, I hear a lot, and I've experienced myself, we could hear a lot like a funk, right? I mean, how many times have you guys felt in a funk in this business, or you have a coach that feels in a funk and they come to you, and and they're in a funk and they want you to fix it, this is like a tool with step by step of how to fix it. Because I mean, this could happen when someone says no, when someone makes fun of you, when someone makes a mean comment or a non-supportive comment, when someone, I mean, it's endless how many times and how often this happens. And Tyler was so excited, you know, honestly, for me, I listen to more personal development. When I'm in a funk, I know I need more personal development. Tyler loves this because it's a step-by-step process. He can journal out and write out exactly what all these points are for him. And I'm not kidding you guys. This has to do with our marriage, but this applies everywhere. He used to pull away from me for days where we wouldn't communicate because he would stay stuck for days and days and days. And this process is helping him get to the point where he can work things out with me within, our goal is 2 hours, right? I mean, even a day for us though is a big deal. So if you translate that into your business and to being a coach, that's huge. That's you being in a funk for a day versus 5 weeks or 6 months. I mean, these funks can last a long time for people. This is a big deal. Okay, sorry, I'm done with my tangent.
Okay. All right. And just one more point on here I wanted to touch on was the power. So power positive and power negative. And this is something like Tiffany talked about that I journal on and write out is something that you can also do as you're learning to identify your triggers, these 5 T's here. So what I'll do is I'll write down these 5 T's and I'll go through my day and identify times that I was triggered and what happened that day. What was the trigger? What was the trip that it took me on? How did I feel inside? What were the emotions that it brought up? What were the thoughts going through my head?
You'll even do like physical too, like what was physically happening with me.
Yeah, like, okay, my stomach was starting to turn, my heart started to race, I started to pull away from my family, I started to, like just detach and, like that type of stuff. Like, and so I'll write all that down, but then also, like I'll write down something that we call power positive for the day. So what was something that you did that day that gave you power? Something that built you up, that pushed you, that was helpful for you for getting past resistance. What was something from that day? And write that down. That was your power positive moment. The power negative is what's something that stole power from you. What did you allow to weaken yourself with through that day? Okay, so write that down. Okay, so show me the money. So it's easy to look around. Okay, we just talked about this, at what other coaches are doing and try to copy them. I hear this a lot. I've done it myself. I hear other people talking about it all the time. Well, so-and-so's really successful, so I'm going to go see what they're posting and just post the same stuff. Okay, that doesn't work. Okay, the real money and growth comes from looking inward, finding out who yourself really is. So I'm going to go back to this slide right here. Okay, to act upon this self-awareness would mean defining herself, differentiating herself from the tribe, and thus making herself vulnerable to rejection, expulsion, and all the other fears that self-definition elicits. Okay, when you can identify these points within yourself, identify your triggers and the trip that it takes you on, the power positive moments, when you can learn to identify that and come to a level of self-awareness, that means that you're defining yourself. And as you define yourself as a human being, that defines you as a coach. And that's where you start to build your own tribe. Okay, we've talked about this before a lot, about building your own tribe. And this is where it comes. When you can figure out who you are as a human being, then you start to attract people who are like you, that want to be around you, that want to hang out with you, that want to join you. And that's where you build this tribe of people around you who are going to love you and support you.
No matter what you do.
Right.
A great example of this is Chalene Johnson. That lady, people will do whatever she says because she has created this
fitness to social media to now health
to dieting, totally off the wall dieting stuff. People will spend money with her like that because she has built a tribe of people because she knows who she is. She she gathered this whole tribe of people because of her fitness stuff. And because people fell in love with her. Oh, what was Trisha holding up? I missed that. Were you holding something up or did I miss that? This is for coaching. Yes, you guys, this is for everything. Oh, there you go. See, Trisha bought her push journal. I just signed up for her beta test diet thing, and it started today. I haven't even looked at it. But people, they trust her because of that tribe she built, because of her fitness programs. They fell in love. She changed their life. People will do whatever she says. She has such a huge influence and she's done an incredible job. People will pay for her Marketing Impact Academy, and now they're going to her diet thing. They will follow her wherever she goes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and she is
real.
She's
real. Yep. She's herself. She's not trying to be Janelle, and Janelle doesn't try to be her. They're two completely different pupils. That was like people and humans in one word. Pupil. Something like that. But they're two totally different people. They're not trying to be each other or act like each other or talk like each other. They're just themselves. And they're both ridiculously successful. So much of the time I get this way with my best friend, Ashlyn, because we are so different. And I sometimes start to feel like, gosh, even though I earn more money than her and I'm technically a higher rank than her lifetime or whatever, I still get in the comparison trap with her because she has a tall, skinny body. She has a 6-pack. And I'm like, maybe I should start talking more like her. Maybe I should be, and I have to I love her and I completely respect her, but I'm not her. So instead of spending time watching her and thinking I should be her, I just have to work. Your time is better spent working on yourself than it is watching anyone else. Yep. Okay, I'm off my soapbox again. Sorry.
Okay.
I need to bring duct tape.
Okay. All right. So another great book that I've read just the introduction to this book, but it's next on my list after I finish Do the Work. So Peak is the book, and it's written by a guy named Anders Ericsson. So I'm going to read just a part. I didn't want to type it all out, so I'm just going to read it here for you. So what he did is he's studied successful people in any industry. So actually, well, let me just read it here. So why are some people so amazingly good at what they do? Anywhere you look, from competitive sports and musical performance to science, medicine, and business, there always seems to be a few exceptional sorts who dazzle us with what they can do and how well they do it. And when we are confronted with such an exceptional person, we naturally tend to conclude that this person was born with something a little extra. He is so gifted, we say, or she has a real gift. But is that really so? For more than 30 years, I've studied these people, the special ones who stand out as experts in their field. Athletes, musicians, chess players, doctors, salespeople, teachers, and more. I have delved into the nuts and bolts of what they do and how they do it. I have observed, interviewed, and tested them. I have explored the psychology, the physiology, and the neuroanatomy of these extraordinary people. And over time, I've come to understand that yes, these people do have an extraordinary gift, which lies at the heart of their capabilities. But it is not the gift that people usually assume it to be. And it is even more powerful than we imagine. Most importantly, it is the gift that every one of us is born with and can, with the right approach, take advantage of. Okay, and that's what leads into this quote right here. So this is later on in this chapter, but he says, so so going back to that introduction, why are some people amazingly good at what they do? And he says, over my years of studying experts in various fields, I have found that they all develop their abilities through dedicated training that drives changes in the brain that makes it possible for them to do the things that they otherwise could not. The clear message from decades of research is that no matter what role innate genetic endowment may play in the achievements of gifted people, so no matter what, special, genes or, whatever it is that we think that these people may have been born with, the main gift that these people have is the same one that we all have. Okay, we all have this. The adaptability of the human brain and body, which they have taken advantage of more than the rest of us. That's it. Okay, the people that are amazingly good, amazingly successful, they're not special. Okay, they don't have any special
superhuman
genes or there's nothing out there. The only thing that makes them special is that they've taken advantage of the thing that everyone else has. We're all born with it. It's our brains. They've taken advantage of it, and they've put it into work. Okay. Sorry, we got Legos going on in the background. Okay, so going back to turning pro. So he says, first, the pro mindset is a discipline that we use to overcome resistance. To defeat the self-sabotaging habits of procrastination, self-doubt, susceptibility to distraction, which I am super good at.
I think we're all good at that. Really, raise your hand if you're not good at distracting the whole planet.
Perfectionism, shallowness. We enlist the self-strengthening habits of order, regularity, discipline, and a constant striving after excellence. Okay, that's not hard to understand. Okay, it's simple, hard to do, but it's simple, right? Simple concept, simple to understand, but hard to do. Okay, but what about the magic? So this magic he's talking about is what Anders Ericsson talks about in Peak. The magic. What's this? What about that special gene that these amazing people have? The ones that are the super moms or the super coaches or whatever it is. What about flashes of brilliance and uncontrolled outbursts of genius? Right, those people that are just genius. How does the professional mindset help there? Isn't it too severe, too hardcore, too regimented? Okay, the answer is no. And this part I really like, and it's a little bit different, but just imagine in your mind as we read this next part. Okay, so the monk glimpses the face of God not by scaling a peak in the Himalayas, but by sitting still in silence. Okay, it means it's not anything amazingly profound that they're doing. They're being still, and they're realizing themselves. It seems counterintuitive, but it's true. In order to achieve the flow, right, the magic, the zone, we start by being common and ordinary and workmanlike. Okay, how many times have we talked about the vital behaviors? Too many to count, right? That's how you become uncommon, is by doing the common day after day after day, putting in the work. Okay, we set our palms against the stones in the garden wall and search until at last, in the instant when we're ready to give up, our fingers fasten upon this secret door. Okay, the secret door is that, amazingness, that awesome coach that we want to be. And like a child entering a meadow, we step over the threshold, forgetting everything except the butterfly that flits across our vision. Okay, that's the biggest obstacle, is ourselves. Learning to overcome that, become who we truly are, overcoming that resistance. Okay, and just putting in that day after day after day work. Not letting ourselves get caught up in what everybody else is doing. Not letting ourselves believe that talk inside of our head that so-and-so is special and they're successful but not me. Okay, that's just the resistance talking. Okay. To achieve a goal you have never achieved before, you must start by doing things you have never done before. So the goals that you have to become a successful coach, a successful parent or spouse, whatever role that you want to apply this in, all of them, or start off with one of them, whatever it may be, but start using these techniques. Okay. Just start in one area and start using them. Find your biggest trigger. What's the one trigger that you have, the one trip that you go on most of the time, and start working on that one. And as that muscle gets strengthened inside of your brain, and as you start to learn how to use those tools and that step-by-step process to get you over those triggers in one area, then it's going to be easier and easier to do in the other ones. Okay. But if you want to be super successful, the key is right here, is to do something that you haven't done before. Look at yourself, look inward, look at what it is, what is that resistance within yourself that's keeping you from accomplishing what you really want to accomplish.
Awesome. This is so interesting because so much of the time people are looking everywhere else. What's the secret? What did Melanie Mitro do? Oh, look at her Facebook ad. Maybe I should do a Facebook ad like her. What's her wording like? Maybe I should take a picture like her. Maybe I should run a group like her. Spend your time on this stuff. It's not the fun stuff. It's not flashy and shiny and exciting, but I've said to several people many times, the people who aren't willing to look inward and work on themselves don't go anywhere. They're the ones that end up quitting. They're the ones that end up saying, I'm not doing this anymore. It wasn't a good fit for me. I wasn't a good coach, so I'm not going to do it. But if you're willing to unpeel the layers kind of off of your heart, which this really is talking about doing, you will start to draw people to you. You will start to attract people to you, things you're passionate about, the things that, like who Trisha and Christy really truly are underneath the layers, right? And Tyler and I, this is a process, and I think this is a lifelong process. I don't think you're ever done with this kind of thing, but if you're willing to unpeel the layers and to change and become who you're meant to be, like I'll be the first to admit I am like a completely different human being than I was 5 years ago. My fitness journey is different. My nutrition is different. Just who I am as a mom is very different. As a wife is very different, I hope. I'm just different. And that's okay. It doesn't mean that's something that I've had a hard time with. Like, I'm so different. I'm not like having to reinvent myself now on social media because I'm so different because of life's experiences. So spend your time working on you. It's not flashy and it hurts. It's hard. It's painful. But this is the key, I believe, to being successful, not just as a coach, but in everything.
Right. And like she said, it's not the fun work, but the work that you do in the dark, the work that you do behind the scenes, the day after day grinding and learning and understanding this material, that work in the dark is what's going to show in the light. Okay. That's what's going to show when you're out, posting, presenting in public, meeting people in, whatever avenue that you're using to contact people. That's what's going to show. All this stuff that you're doing in the background, even though it's not flashy or fun, it's hard.
And it's not
work.
Overnight.
It's right. But it's what's going to show up when people start to follow you and they'll want to be like you. They'll want to, they want to join you. They want to join your tribe because you're such an awesome person because of this work that you've put in. And you can only do so much pretending and trying to be somebody, fun or flashy or whatever, but the more real and tied and connected you are with yourself and your true mission, the more that other people are going to see that. I think people have a built-in BS meter within themselves. And so as you're even if they have a Facebook BS meter where you write something down, and if it's not true to your heart and true to who you are, people see that and they know it.
They can just tell, because the people that are true to themselves, you can feel that. Like, you can feel that they are so genuine and so real about what they're saying that you can feel it. So when you don't feel that, it's kind of like, a show.
Yep.
I hope this is helpful. I thought this was awesome. I have good notes.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you two for joining us. You two are two of the awesome ones willing to face your biggest obstacles.
Trisha says this felt like a much needed therapy session. You know what? We've done a lot of therapy, like personal work and on our marriage. And then I did it individually. Our kids have done a lot of therapy. If that's the way you have to work through your stuff, and I might very well end up going back because I got a lot of stuff with my parents I need to work through. So, yeah, if that's the way if that works for you, that's awesome. We're big advocates of therapy.
Yeah. So let's see. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. Okay. All right. So thank you guys for joining. We're going to post this, so hopefully everybody gets a chance to listen in because I feel like it's super helpful. So if you wouldn't mind, give us some positive reviews.
Yeah, give us some reviews so people know it's worth watching, because sometimes I think people are like, especially if they have to learn about overcoming themselves. That's not like a get to 5-star or how to become elite. I guarantee you if we would have had a title like that, we would have had 25 people show up, right? But really, this is the underlying,
Get over your damn self. That's right.
This is the underlying stuff, Can't get to 5-star unless you're working on this crap. All right, you guys, have a good night. Go spend time with your families. Okay, talk to you later.
Everybody.
You can just end it.